We are human. We learn and then unlearn and forget and then remember and then dive in and learn it again. We are cyclical. Maybe there's some days where you actually don't feel like you're making any progress, but you resting and not thinking about it is actually progress. And it's really important to continue to remind ourselves of the humanity piece. We are human. And we are not going to get everything right away. But the one thing that we can always hold on to is that no matter what, we are growing. Welcome to Root and Rewire, a grounded, mystical space for awakening, remembering, and becoming. I'm Kayla, and here we explore the shifts, the stories, and the synchronicities that reshape us from the inside out, along with the mystical, the unseen, and the magic that's woven into everyday life. Take a deep breath, soften into yourself, and let's begin. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Root and Rewire podcast. As always, I'm very honored and happy to be here in a space where I can share freely and allow my intuition to take the reins and have you all here in a place where you feel safe enough to allow yourselves to be open. And it's a beautiful segment that we're in together, just creating a safe space together to take what resonates, leave what doesn't, and allow ourselves to drift into questioning, thinking, feeling, and sensation. This is always fun for me, and I hope that you guys are able to take something from this episode as well. I really wanted this episode to be around the heart and mind connection, and also talk about neutrality and how it can play a role as being a blockage. And we've spoken about neutrality before. The heart and mind connection is something that I've been reflecting on very, very deeply, something that has been popping up in my life as I continue to work through neutrality. It's where we are moving as a consciousness, right? We are diving more into our heart. We are allowing ourselves to feel our emotions freely in a safe container. We are realizing that our bodies are so intellectual, and we're allowing our bodies to take the lead. It's common then that we would start thinking about the heart and mind and what integration truly looks like. So the heart-mind connection, many of us swing between using emotion and using logic. As individuals, we come in with a certain type of being, right? Maybe we are more airy, maybe we are more rooted and grounded. So it's natural for us then to have our minds take the lead or have our hearts take the lead. And we'll dive into what the difference between these are. But I do feel that neutrality is often misunderstood. And we've talked about neutrality and what it truly does mean, it not being something where we see ourselves as separate, right? It's really about how we've allowed both our emotion and our mind to come together to give us a way forward. And neutrality being the understanding of what is quote unquote really good in this scenario and quote unquote what is really bad in this scenario, and why are both perfect and where do we fall now? So the question that I've been posing that led me into the heart-mind connection is, what happens when we become so neutral that love stops flowing. And I like to think of it as when we're getting ourselves neutral, we often go through the stages of grief, right? There is the anger, there is the acceptance. We go through each and every single one of those stages. Personally, I do. Maybe it's not common for everyone. But before I reach true neutrality, I do feel as if I drift between all of them and then finally get into a space where, okay, this is just perfect as it is. And this needed to happen in the way that it did. And I needed to feel all of these emotions to get to this point. But as we drift further into this conversation, it's important to understand what the difference between the heart and mind are. So when we think about the heart, we think about feeling, we think about sensation, we think about love, vulnerability, care. When we think about the mind, we think of logic, analysis, discernment, structure. Both are necessary, but neither one is wrong, right? Because like I said before, we are more adapt to having one or the other lead us more, and that's natural. But I do think as humans, as we start to evolve and mature and get older, we start to realize that maybe what has been leading us the whole time it's not wrong, but maybe there's a way that we could lean more into the heart. We can lean more into the feeling, lean more into analysis and structure, and come to a place of total devotion where both exist. The heart knows what's true, and the mind knows what's sustainable. That's how I differentiate between the two. Moving this further, there's a way that we can drift too far into each. And when we allow one or the other to be the one that is guiding, for example, if we allow the heart to take the lead, then maybe we see ourselves as overgiving, people-pleasing, losing boundaries, emotional flooding, trying to earn safety through love. Maybe you find yourselves in situations where you're sharing too much, giving others more access to you than you should. And when we lean the other way, going too far into the mind, there's emotional distancing, there's over-analysis, there's numbness that's disguised as peace, there's withholding care to avoid pain. And this is where neutrality often enters the conversation. So, as you all know, through a previous episode, I have been working on neutrality. I find myself in two different scenarios where my mind is taking the lead. I'm too far in my head. I lose sleep over my mind constantly going over what could go wrong, what the next day could look like, what I have to get done. And then I often, too, fall into scenarios, mostly in my relationships, where I'm too far into my heart, where I'm only allowing my heart to take the lead and I am overgiving, not distinguishing between boundaries, allowing my emotions to fully take over my being. So when I was finally checked, thinking about neutrality, before Christmas, I met up with my father, and we were having a real conversation where he was asking me about my intimate relationship, and I was telling him about where I used to be, right, in my past relationship where I found myself too much in my heart. And I was very overgiving and I didn't have any boundaries. And I really did lose myself in that relationship because I didn't know where he stopped and I started, and where I started and he stopped. So I became very much this other person. And now in my current relationship, I found myself going to the opposite, where there was a block that I was putting up, and I thought it was because I was protecting myself. And I was telling my father how I viewed the relationship. To me, I felt like I was neutral in the place of, I love him, but if we aren't together, if we don't end up together, I'm going to be okay. And as he was questioning me and as I was talking, he realized that I was too far into neutrality. And he posed the honest question, where is the love? Where is the care here? Because it seems like to me, you are restricting love on purpose. And if you were to leave this relationship, if this relationship were to end, could you truly say to yourself that you were as invested in love as you possibly could be? Could you say that you did this relationship true justice? And I was immediately triggered, which was a sign to me that he was speaking some truth, and there was some truth there for sure. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I was so far into neutrality that I was actually in my ego. And I really wasn't using discernment. I was using blockage to protect myself. And my ego tricked myself into thinking that I was actually giving love, but I was protecting myself in the process. So truly, I wasn't giving love. Actually, I was withholding love on purpose. And, I did that as a way to protect myself. And what I found was, in thinking of neutrality and the ego and the heart and the mind, that true neutrality isn't the absence of love. It's the ability to stay open without gripping. When neutrality removes care, it's not wisdom. It's fear that is dressed up as logic. The ego is natural, right? We all have an ego, and the ego developed since we were young. And it developed as a way to, with sincerity, to protect us. It's something that we've used to shield us, and it has guided a lot of our decision making. And the ego, I find to be a lot of other people's perceptions that are not real. The job of the ego is safety, but it is not truth. And like everything, the ego is not bad. It is just not what should be taking the lead. My ego wasn't trying to ruin my relationship. It was trying to make sure that I didn't get hurt and I didn't repeat the pattern of my past relationship. So now we had to come up with a new internal hierarchy where the heart became the compass, the mind became a map, and the ego became an alarm system where integration came from not choosing between the heart and the mind, but it was about letting love lead, clarity support, and fear to inform but not decide. So using my relationship as an example, I found that I had drifted too far into neutrality. My ego was protecting my decision making by telling me that what I was doing was actually for safety. It was just alarming me. What is my ego trying to alarm me of? Okay, it's showing me that I have probably drifted too far into neutrality. And my heart is telling me that there needs to be a little bit more opening here. There needs to be more expansion here. And the medicine that I told myself, since I was about to go on a trip to see my partner's family, I am going to fully let my heart lead while I'm away. I'm going to fully let my heart take the lead. I'm not going to question it. I'm just going to allow it to be open. And what happened was truly, truly beautiful. I allowed myself to be in love fully and allowed myself to care as much as I possibly could. And it wasn't just for him, it was for the moment, it was for everybody else involved, and it was for myself. And after that trip, I wrote down all of how my heart took the lead, what it felt like, and how it ended up changing my overall experience. After that trip, it became really important for me to bring discernment back into my everyday decision making. Not to close my heart again, but to support it. And anytime I found myself too involved in emotion, I would ask myself, how can I bring a little bit more of my mind here? How can I bring a little bit more of discernment and logic into this space? And same when I was overthinking. When I was overthinking, I asked myself, how could I bring more love into this space right now? And during times when I made a decision, I still had to ask myself, is this ego protecting me? Or is this truly integration of where I feel at peace with both my heart and my mind? Because I feel as if we hear heart-mind connection and it sounds great and it sounds beautiful. But when put into practice, it's, how do I actually do this? Same with neutrality. This sounds great, but how do I actually do this so I'm not letting my ego disguise itself as a decision maker? So I really suggest that using that framing technique, that hierarchy, is how to guide yourself to know that you are coming from a place of true alignment and integration, and you're not repeating a past pattern. You're not allowing fear to enter the space to guide your decision making, and to allow yourself to be fully present in a moment and feel the sensations while still knowing that it's coming from a place of pure love and not fear or desperation or sadness or people pleasing. So using the heart as a compass. How do I feel? Using the mind as a map. Where do I want to go? And using the ego as an alarm of, what is this trying to tell me right now? So when you notice logic dominating, ask yourself, how can I bring more love into this? When emotion is overwhelming, ask yourself, what clarity or structure would support me here? And reassure yourself that you don't need a perfect answer. You are just listening. So we're going to take this even a little bit deeper. If this is still something to settle with, I always find that going to pen and paper is the number one best technique to go to. So you find yourself in a space. You find yourself emotionally overcharged or your mind very overstimulating. Write down, what part of me is speaking right now? Is it my heart? Is it my mind? Or is it my ego? What is my ego trying to protect me from feeling? If love were allowed here without control, what would shift? And what choice honors both my safety and my capacity to love? So if you need to, please pause the episode and go back and write this all down somewhere so that you have it. this is something that I have been doing for myself. I often find that on this self journey that I'm on, I get so overwhelmed with ideas and things that I want to work on that I lose track of what learnings are actually beneficial for me. And this is one that has been so divinely beneficial that I use it all the time. And it's gotten me to a place where I'm actually able to do it just from using my voice, just from using my words. If I'm walking my dogs and I find myself completely emotionally overcharged, I can ask myself, what is trying to be said here? Is this my heart, my mind, or my ego? What is trying to protect me? What is it trying to protect me from? And what do I need to bring in to get more to a place of neutrality so that I can understand both sides of the coin? So, as we mentioned in a previous episode, neutrality is allowing yourself to see the beauty of both sides. And there's beauty in when something is going really well, to ask yourself, what can go horribly wrong? And there's beauty in the opposite of when something is probably not going the way that we want it, to ask it, where is the beauty here and why is this so perfect? It's always important that when you are feeling something, to not immediately run and jump to trying to understand it, but to instead allowing it to move through your body, to fully feel it before letting it go. And then we can circle back to the heart and mind connection. How can I bring more love here? How can I bring more safety here? How can I bring more capacity here? You don't have to choose between loving deeply and being okay. The work is learning how to do both at the same time. And this is why being human is so beautiful, because we are all having an experience and we all have a lifetime of learning, and nothing is learned and perfected immediately. You can be on the road to learning something and you're going to be tested on how much you actually learn it. How much do you actually know it? And then that invites even greater, deeper capacity to learn again, to learn more. I offer this episode as a way of understanding and thinking about your decisions in a different way. Of understanding, are you acting from alignment and integration, or are you acting from a protective mechanism that's been ingrained since you were young? Or ingrained since the last traumatic experience? I'm offering this episode as a way to think about what has happened and why it's happened, and where are you supposed to grow now? Because the way that you've been moving about your everyday life, maybe it hasn't been so beneficial lately. Maybe you being too overstimulated with emotion isn't leading to deeper intimacy. Maybe you constantly overthinking isn't allowing yourself time to fully rest in the present moment. And that is an alarm system. That is your body telling you that there is something deeper here that you are meant to dive into and to learn. And I really think it's important to not forget the humanity piece of self-growth. Because right now I feel as if spirituality is so meta. Spirituality is so like and subscribe and repost and love and light. And what spirituality, just like religion, is meant to be is a tool to help you understand yourself on an even deeper level. We are human. We learn and then unlearn and forget and then remember and then dive in and learn it again. We are cyclical, Maybe there's some days where you actually don't feel like you're making any progress, but you resting and not thinking about it is actually progress. And it's really important to continue to remind ourselves of the humanity piece. We are human. And we are not going to get everything right away. But the one thing that we can always hold on to is that no matter what, we are growing. Even having the thought of, I'm not doing this today, or I don't feel as spiritually connected as I once did. That is you still learning. That is you tapping into the intelligence of your body, the intelligence of your intuition, the intelligence of your soul. Those things never leave. Those things are always there. So I really appreciate you diving into the space with me and allowing yourselves to be open for this journey of the conversation of the heart and the mind. And like always, I'm always open to connecting with you further. If you need someone to listen, if you have questions, if you want to teach me something, always open. But like every episode, I really do hope that you got something from this. And I'm so excited to see you in the very next episode. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much for your support and tuning in today. If this episode supported you and you would like to share, or if you're just looking for someone to connect with, you can find me on Instagram at Soil and Soul Sister. I hope to hear from you. I would love to hear from you. And until next time.